David Pasternak's tendinitis is the headline, but the bigger takeaway from day one of Boston Bruins training camp is Marco Sturm tearing down old hierarchies in the locker room. Let's talk about why this culture reset might be the spark Boston needs after finishing dead last in the East.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, September 19th. And on today's show, we're going to discuss Marco Sturm shaking up tradition by mixing vets and kids in the locker rooms at training camp. Some way too early line analysis from day one at Warrior Ice Arena. We'll close with why Matěj Blümel chose Boston, plus Sean Kuraly as our Bruin of the day. Also, of course, touch on David Pastrnak and his tendinitis. Before we get into all that, thank you for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for nearly 2 decades now. If you'd like to follow along on social media, you can do so at Locked NHL Bruins. That's on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, even TikTok. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. All right, let's get into it. And day one of training camp was yesterday, and it was the first time the Bruins were able to get on the ice under new head coach Marco Sturm. But one of the biggest impacts he made on this day happened off the ice. Nikita Zadorov discussed it. Marco Sturm confirmed it. This camp already feels very different, and that's because they're intentionally tearing down hierarchies and placing vets and kids together to mesh as one team. And this could set the tone for the entire season. Now, training camp is taking place at Warrior Ice Arena, the Bruins practice rink. So unlike TD Garden, where you would have a home and away locker room, the home one being better, obviously, but still the away locker room being nice enough for the visiting professional hockey players. At Warrior, you have the Bruins locker room, and that's pretty much it, because it's only designed for the one team to practice. So at Warrior, they've set up an auxiliary space for, in light of there being kind of a Group A and a Group B at training camp. There's so many players. There's like 2 teams worth. And in the past, it had been a situation where the veterans were the ones taking space in the actual locker room, whereas the young kids or maybe guys on PTOs would get the smaller auxiliary space. This year, however, Group A, which is made up of vets, prospects, roster hopefuls, they are in the main room, regardless of age or resume, while Group B is in the smaller room. Nikita Zadorov said of the change, last year you had some guys you had never seen before. You step onto the ice, but you hadn't seen them before in the room because you're literally getting your equipment on in separate spaces. He said now you're in the same room with them, and he kind of likes it. Think about that. 6'6" vet admitting he didn't even know some kids' names last year. So this is all about building familiarity from the jump. Now, make no mistake, Don Sweeney said the other day that, these guys are competing for jobs, and in order to secure a position on the opening night roster, you're going to have to take a job from somebody else. But the reality is these guys are all part of the Boston Bruins organization, and there has to be some of that bonding, camaraderie that comes up, as well as some of these vets showing the kids how it's done, and the kids being able to look up to these guys and get a glimpse of what it's like to be a pro, and also not feel like they're, lesser than by being tossed into the janitor's closet to get their equipment on. Now, I initially on social media, when Zadorov was talking about this, said that's kind of captain stuff. Obviously, it wasn't his decision. Marco Sturm later confirmed that it was his call. He's always done it this way with his previous teams because we want to be a team. It makes absolutely no sense to split them up, he said. He even joked that Group A, being in the nicer digs, has to buy Group B a beer because they're in the bleeping other locker room. That humor, that accountability is classic Sturm, and he's setting expectations without alienating anyone. We know the Bruins kind of have something like this already where they don't have, the rookie lap, but it was kind of striking to hear that in previous years there had been that, or at least last year, there was that clear split between the vets getting the nice digs, the younger guys, or AHL veterans kind of getting tossed into the other space. It's kind of arbitrary whether you're in Group A or Group B, but the fact is the Group A guys are living one experience together. The Group B guys, which includes some veterans like Pavel Zacha, like Sean Kuraly, Mark Kastelik, Hampus Lindholm is in that mix as well. They're dealing with the lesser space, and, there's some bonding that could come from that as well. So this ties directly to the kids versus veterans depth war storyline that we've been touching on this season. Sturm isn't just balancing ice time and opportunities, he's engineering chemistry off the ice. And for a team resetting after a last place finish, it's not just about systems, it's about rebuilding culture and identity, especially when you don't have a sole captain to look to as a player. Everybody's looking to Sturm right now to lead the ship. So that was the one big storyline. Of course, David Pastrnak being the lone absence Thursday. We knew it was tendinitis. Marco Sturm, in some kind of unorthodox coaching transparency, confirmed it's knee tendinitis. But he stressed Pasta could have stated yesterday they just want to be careful. Pasta was on the ice an hour before practice. I believe that was the case here again on Friday. Sturm said he's knocking on the coach's door every day, wanting to skate, just trying to pull him back a little bit for precautionary reasons. This isn't alarming, but it underlines another key storyline for the Bruins this season. Pasternak's prime years, and the Bruins can't afford any setback with their superstar. So, Sturm is reshaping the locker room dynamic. Even with Pastrnak sidelined briefly, the energy is all about inclusion, chemistry, and of course, making sure your superstar player is taken care of, he's well, and fully ready to begin the season. There's no reason to get him out there participating in full skates if it's going to just inflame his tendinitis. Now, with David Pastrnak off the ice, we saw some different line combinations. Way too early to analyze them, but we're going to do it anyways. Let's break down the line combos on day one at training camp. They're going to change, but they already reveal a little bit about Sturm's blueprint, and we'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. Week 3 of the NFL season is underway, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for this Sunday's action with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. People love using FanDuel because it fits however they like to bet, whether it's player props, building same-game parlays. It makes every game even more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So, if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet, and if it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Early practice lines in training camp don't really mean much. It's still September. They've yet to play a preseason game, although that's coming up Sunday. They do show us a bit about Sturm's intent, mixing vets and kids, building around pairs, and giving upside swings a chance. Here's how the groups looked on Thursday. Group A, the nice locker room guys. We had Morgan Geekie skating with Elias Lindholm, and in David Pasternak's absence, we had Viktor Arvidsson up on that top line. Then you had Marat Husnudinov with Joey Abate skating on the second line with Casey Middlestat and Alex Steeves. Interesting there because we expect Zacha Middlestat to compete for the second line center role with Arvidsson on the right side. Steve's getting a chance to prove that he is NHL ready after a stellar AHL season last year. The third line in Group A looked very tantalizing. You had Johnny Beecher skating with Fraser Minten and Fabian Lysell. That could be your third line to begin the season. Although there are, of course, questions about Group B, who's going to integrate. Georgi Merkulov, John Farinacci, Brett Harrison, Dan Slok-Mellis were all skating together on the fourth line. Those guys likely will begin the season in Providence, but you never know. Maybe Lock-Mellis stands out or Merkulov finally is given a chance. You had Mason Lohrei skating with Charlie McAvoy, Nikita Zadorov with Henry Jokiharju. Those could easily be your first and third pairings to begin the season. You had Michael Callahan, Billy Sweezy, Loki Johansson, Ty Gallagher. Again, guys likely to begin in the AHL. In this group, the goalies were Jeremy Swayman, Michael DiPietro, and Ben Rebick. Now, Group B. Matěj Blümel with Pavel Zacha and Tanner Jeannot. Interesting. Jeannot getting an opportunity to skate with more offensively minded players. Mikey Esimont, Sean Kuraly, Mark Kastelik. That could easily be a fourth line for the Boston Bruins. But look, if you have a Beecher, Minten, Lysell third line and a Esimont, Kuraly, Kastelik fourth line, where do Blümel, where do Jeannot fit in? You had Riley Tufte with Matt Poitras and Riley Duran. Again, looks like that could be a line that begins in Providence with Jeffrey Viel, Patrick Brown, Dalton Bancroft, and Jake Schmaltz on the fourth line. Interestingly, you had Hampus Lindholm with Andrew Peeke. Again, I could easily see Lohrei, McAvoy, Lindholm, Peeke, Zadorov, Jokiharju as your top three pairings, with Jordan Harris, Victor Soderstrom as your extras. Frederick Brunet, Jonathan Asperat, Jackson Edward, among others, Colin Felix, Max Warner, skating in depth roles, Providence bound, with Korpisalo tending the net with Simon Zazacek and Luke Kavelin. Now, some observations here. Arvidsson was skating in Pasta's spot with Geekie and Lindholm. The lines are in flux, but this shows Arvidsson is the first call if Pasta ever misses real time, and that he is the second most important right winger on the team at the moment. Sturm stressed his philosophy is about finding duos. Lindholm, Geekie, Middlestat, Zacha, Lohrei, McAvoy, maybe Beecher, Minten, rotating wings until it clicks. Minten centering Lysell and Beecher is no throwaway. Those are 3 NHL adjacent players being tested together. Lysell finally in a skill spot, with Minten and Beecher being offensively capable, but also defensively responsible. You had that Czech comfort line with Zacha and Blümel together. 39 AHL goals last year for Blümel, given a chance to shine with a fellow Czech. Fourth line template kind of drawn as well. Esimont with Kuraly and Kostelic. Looks like a Sturm favorite. Fast, straight line, defensively sound. And then you have Andrew Peeke stepping into Brandon Carlo's old slot beside Hampus Lindholm, with Zadorov, Jokiharju reunited, and the numbers back it up. They had a 12-5 goal edge in 273 minutes together last spring. Now, these combinations will surely shuffle, but the signals are clear. Sturm is serious about integrating prospects, creating chemistry pairs, and trusting data-backed duos like Zadorov and Jokiharju. The big question, of course, is how the bottom six is going to shake out. If you have Beecher, Minten, Lysell as a line, and then Esimont, Kuraly, Kostelic, where do where do Blümel fit in? Is Matt Patra destined to begin the season in Providence? It's a tough one. Like, you could have Geeky, Lindholm, Pastrnak, Zacha, Middlestat, Arvidsson, Beecher, Minten, Lysell, Esimont, Kuraly, Kostelic, and then you're leaving out of the lineup Husnudinov. You're leaving out Tanner Jeannot, Matěj Blümel, Alex Steves, Matt Patra. Like, this is the reason why they didn't bring in any guys on PTOs, because it's so muddled already how the middle bottom six is going to shake out. You could easily have 5 lines here, and there's only so many spots for so many players. That leads me to believe that the NHL waiver eligible guys could be sent down before the others, just to have some asset management. So that's a tough look for Patra, for Minten, for Lysell. They're really going to have to impress in camp in order to force the Bruins' hand and have other guys sent down instead. They're going to get a shot to impress on Sunday as the Bruins actually begin their exhibition schedule just 2 nights from now. It's a game, obviously, we will recap when it comes to Monday's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. I'll try to jump on Reels, TikTok, Shorts to discuss that after the game if anything big happens. The Bruins playing the Washington Capitals, 5 p.m. at TD Garden. That's obviously going to be a game to watch, and we'll recap it on the next episode. Everydayers know that the best way to keep up on all things Locked On Boston Bruins is to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. Each new episode automatically drops into your podcast feeds. It's also on YouTube, so hit that bell so when a new episode drops, you are automatically notified. All right, so that's an early look at the line combinations and some quick observations. Up next, we're going to talk about why Blümel chose Boston and how Sean Kuraly's return adds more than just nostalgia. He is today's Bruin of the Day. We'll get to that here as the podcast continues. Thanks again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Everydayers, I appreciate you so much. And the rest of you, if you're just joining us, please do subscribe so that you never miss a thing. I just wanted to touch on why Matěj Blümel chose Boston, because it offers opportunity and support, which he revealed yesterday. This is via the Bruins website. Bell Fraser taking over duties there. Also want to touch on Sean Kuraly, our Bruin of the Day, and his return to the Boston Bruins after a few years in Columbus. Speaking of 3 years, that's the amount of time Blümel spent in the Dallas organization with no real NHL opportunities. But he did dominate in Texas. 72 points in 67 games last season, including 39 goals. He said he'd been in Dallas for 3 years and felt like he'd been doing everything he could to earn a spot, but it just didn't go his way. There's a lot of Bruins prospects who can relate to that. He and his representatives were looking for a team where he could fit in and feel like he had a chance to get into the NHL and earn a spot. The Bruins offered both opportunity and familiarity. Obviously, David Pastrnak, Pavel Zacha are Czech natives, and Blümel has known Pastrnak for 6 years. He stayed with Zacha for a week this summer upon coming to Boston and looking for a place of his own. He said it's really nice because during the year you have ups and downs, and you want to have some Czech players around to lift you up. Blümel could very well be on the Czech Olympic team alongside Zacha and Pastrnak here coming up in February. Now, Marco Sturm previously coached in the AHL, and he coached against the Texas Stars, called Blümel one of the guys you just had to cover, especially on the power play, where typically a guy like Leon Draisaitl hangs out. That's the name Sturm invoked when talking about Blümel's prowess on the power play, especially. That's how dangerous he can be. He's obviously not Leon Draisaitl. He's not going to win the Art Ross Trophy, the Hart Trophy, lead the league NHL-wise anyways in goals. He did lead the AHL in goals. But with the Bruins power play that's looking to be reinvented, that was struggling last season, a guy like Blümel could be extremely valuable. And to show that he's more than just a scorer, he said he thinks it looks like he really likes offense, but he can also help on the other side of the ice. Whatever role he gets, he'll take it. And again, going back to that depth conversation, like, do you have Blümel on the second line with Mittelstadt and Arvidsson? And we know Sturm loves Zacha as center, so maybe you put him as C3 to spread out the veterans. You have Zacha with Husnudinov and Lysell, perhaps, or Minten and Lysell. It's going to be really interesting to see who cracks those lines and who the odd man out is. Which brings us to Sean Kuraly, back on a 2-year deal after 4 years in Columbus. He's 32, and he's one of the older players in camp with the veteran voice. He's a guy who has been in Boston through some up years. He was in Columbus, some non-playoff teams. He said being part of losing teaches you patience. It's part of career growth. Kuraly recently lost his father. He was in Columbus last year when the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau happened. That all has shaped him, helped him grow, put the game into perspective. It's all part of his personal as well as career growth. Returning to Boston, he said it feels a bit different. There's some new faces, some familiar, just a fresh, exciting kind of feel. Blümel is kind of an upside swing. Kuraly is the steady anchor. And together they embody Sturm's goal of mixing kids, vets, and pushing the right buttons in order to find success, to blend risk and reliability. Now, Kuraly's coming off a season in which he played a full 82 games for Columbus. He had 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 total points. His career high was achieved in Columbus, 14 goals, 16 assists for 30 points in his first season back in 2021-22. With Boston, he had 8 goals one season, 23 points another, Those were his highs in black and gold. Not expecting earth-shattering numbers from him, but we know he can score big goals in big moments. And he's, again, also been around for quite some time. And as a former Bruin, he knows what it takes to succeed in this market, what the expectations are, and what his role is, how he can fit into this team in this moment. So here's what we learned from day one of Bruins camp. Marco Sturm is setting a different tone right away by tearing down old locker room hierarchies and mixing veterans and kids to integrate as one group, or two separate groups at this moment, but same thing. It's not just symbolic. It's about engineering chemistry, reshaping a culture that collapsed into a last place finish last season. Keeping it lighthearted too, joking the B guys owe the A guys a beer. On the ice, the way too early line combos tell us plenty. Viktor Arvidsson is being groomed as pasta insurance. Sturm's building around pairs like Lindholm Geeky, Minten, Lysell. They're getting real looks alongside NHL caliber players. Meanwhile, the defense pairings also show some clarity with Lohrei, McAvoy, Peak stepping into Carlo's old role, Zadorov, Jokiharju reuniting after surprisingly strong numbers late last year. And then there's new faces. Blümel chose Boston because it offers opportunity and Czech support. He's betting on himself after dominating in the AHL, while Sean Kuraly's return to Boston, he's a different player, a different person, bringing veteran perspective and checking line stability. They represent the balance Sturm wants to strike between upside and reliability. Boston's camp is already about more than systems and drills. It's about resetting the culture, integrating the next wave of talent, making sure the veterans buy into it. And if Sturm can keep that energy rolling, the Bruins might just start writing a redemption story instead of repeating what happened last year. All right, that's all for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. On Monday, we'll do a full recap of Sunday's preseason game against the Washington Capitals. Please follow the show on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Follow along at Locked NHL Bruins and at ENC McLaren on social media. Thank you for making Locked On Bruins your first listen today. Check out the Locked On NHL podcast as your second listen. League-wide stories from our local experts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Today is our oldest son's birthday, so we're heading, where else? The Lego store, Chick-fil-A, stuff that your average teenager just loves. And it's going to be a nice one. Maybe we'll head out to the apple orchard over the weekend, watch some Bruins hockey on Sunday, shaping up to be a nice one. So please do enjoy as well. And thanks again. We'll talk to you here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.